Hey, it's your guy Tyrrell back with the interviews. In today's video, we're going to briefly analyze how Mason Mount and Olivier Giroud played a key role in Chelsea unlocking Simeone's 6-3-1. When we break down the game and we do look at the board, we have both sides starting the game in a 3-4-2-1, but this game was all about Simeone dropping off a bit deeper and looking to disrupt Chelsea from creating chances and scoring a vital away goal. So when we look at Atletico Madrid, what we end up seeing was that initially we expected them to drop off into more of a 5-4-1 out of possession, with Lamar and Marcus Llorente out in the wider areas dealing with the wing backs pushing forward, and then you would expect João Felix and Correa to push forward to close down Azpilicueta and Rudiger. However, what we ended up seeing from Simeone was that he instructed his side to drop off into a 6-3-1, and the goal here was to ensure that Chelsea struggled to create chances, and the main tactical theme was how they were able to exploit that system. Now, when you ask yourself why Simeone dropped off into a 6-3-1, the key battle here was to ensure that Chelsea's attacking players couldn't get any free space in and around the Atletico box. You had Correa dropping off deeper to deal with Marcos Alonso, and that reason was that Alonso struggles to win 1v1 battles, and his threat is more about finding space in behind the defense in that left channel or in the box. So now you could have Correa dealing with Alonso to nullify his threat. Across the backline, Marcos Llorente and Hermoso would deal with Mount and Werner, and then it ensures that you have 2v1 with Olivier Giroud, with Savage and Felipe monitoring his threat in and around the box. Hudson-Odoi was often likely to push forward, and that was the biggest threat as he could get in behind Lamar, and you would fancy him in a 1v1 duel against the left wing back. And then when we look higher up the pitch, it would be Koke dealing with Kovacic. They wanted Saul to step to Jorginho, but what we ended up seeing from Atletico was that they had Luis Suarez stepping towards Christensen, but also blocking off the lane into Jorginho, with Saul able to step forward. And then if Azpilicueta looked to join the attack, João Felix would be able to push forward to close him down. That leaves Rudiger as the spare man in that Chelsea 11, but when he did look to push forward, you could have Koke stepping in towards his path to apply pressure, with Saul stepping to Kovacic and Suarez dropping off Jorginho. And if Saul stuck with Jorginho, then what Simeone instructed his men to do was to have Correa pushing into the path of Kovacic, and if Chelsea were able to get the ball out to Alonso, he had the pace to recover his positioning to close down the Chelsea left wing back. So as you can see, Simeone's system was well constructed to disrupt Chelsea's 3-4-2-1 that has been successful under Tuchel, but they were able to get themselves into good positions, largely down the right-hand side, and it was down to Atletico Madrid struggling to sustain this pressure. It often involved Mason Mount's movement, and what we saw in the earlier stages was that he would look to drift into space on the outside of João Felix, because that would ensure that he did receive the ball in space away from Hermoso's pressure. But if he wanted to pick up the ball in and around the final third, the way that Chelsea were able to find an advantage was if Mount shifted into space ahead of Lamar, and that would allow Hudson-Odoi to push forward in behind that Atletico Madrid backline. They have a 2v1 advantage there, and if Hermoso doesn't shift across, then Lamar can't step towards Hudson-Odoi and leave Mount free, and he would hold his position, and Hudson-Odoi would be able to make runs in behind the wing back. Atletico Madrid were able to overcome this threat by having Hermoso stepping forward to Mason Mount, or if they had Lamar pushing forward towards Mount, then they could have Hermoso shifting across to close down Hudson-Odoi. If they wanted Hermoso to maintain his position around the box, then they could have João Felix dropping off deeper to close down Mount until Azpilicueta pushed higher up the pitch. If we look to an example, here you could see Jorginho ahead of the Atletico Madrid midfield trio, but with Giroud ahead of Hermoso to the left of Felipe, and Mount ahead of Savage, and that now creates space for Hudson-Odoi to run beyond the ball watching Lamar. Lamar does well to recover his positioning with a desperate sliding lunge to block Hudson-Odoi's first-time ball, intended for Werner making a run across Marcos Llorente. Shortly after that, we witness Azpilicueta carrying the ball into Atletico's third with no pressure on the ball, and as Mount shifts into space ahead of Lamar, Hudson-Odoi begins to make a run off the left wing-back. Azpilicueta ends up splitting Lamar and Hermoso for Hudson-Odoi's run into right half space, but unfortunately for Chelsea, the pass was overhit. Then there was a time where Jorginho received Alonso's pass across Koke, and when he looks forward, you could see Mount ahead of Lamar in space behind Joao Felix, which enables Hudson-Odoi to make a run free off the left wingback. But once again, another overhit pass, this time from Jorginho, evades Hudson-Odoi's run behind the Atletico backline into right half space. And even in the second half, we see a rare moment where this time Mount looks to make a run off Hermoso, and that gives Jorginho an outlet to pick out Hudson-Odoi's run off a ball-watching Lamar. But here, Hudson-Odoi receives Jorginho's ball over the top towards the byline, but opts to hit a first-time effort that Lamar blocks for a corner. And along with Mount creating space for Hudson-Odoi to make runs in behind Lamar, his ability to shift into that deeper inside right position or into space across from Hermoso without pressure being applied allowed him to create some combinations with Hudson-Odoi to get into good positions. If we look to an example, here we could see Azpilicueta sliding the ball around Joao Felix for Mount dropping into an inside right position towards the touchline, with Hudson-Odoi forcing Lamar to shift across and Giroud occupying Hermoso. That results in Hudson-Odoi receiving Mount's pass and then cutting across Lamar to play a reverse splitting pass between Joao Felix and the left wing back for Mount. Here, he has Werner making a run between Marcos Llorente and Savic, along with Alonso running off Correa as an option. And while Lamar does attempt to track back to close down Mount, the Chelsea attacking midfielder delivers a quality ball through the 6-yard box that evades both Werner and Marcos Alonso's run towards goal. Later on in that half, it was Azpilicueta sliding the ball across Joao Felix to Hudson-Odoi on the touchline, and he drags out Lamar while Mount shifts laterally towards that zone a few yards ahead of Hermoso, who doesn't step forward to apply tight pressure. Hudson-Odoi and Mount play a quick two around Lamar to pull out Hermoso towards the left channel, and that led to Hudson-Odoi playing the ball across Hermoso to set Mount free into right half space behind Lamar and Joao Felix, forcing Saul to come across. And with Saul shifting across to provide cover for Hermoso and Lamar, he cuts off Mount's low ball towards the 6-yard box. The other option that Chelsea could have utilized more often was having Mount shift across the left-hand side to overload that area or force Savic to step forward and then win that 1v1 duel. Here you could see Kovacic playing the ball to Mount, dropping into the Correa-Llorente gap to create an overload on the left-hand side. As Correa is focused on Alonso, Koke should be tighter on Kovacic, and Llorente is focused on Werner. But when Mount receives Kovacic's pass, he's approached by Llorente, which forces Savic to shift across to Werner to apply cover pressure, and it leaves Werner in a good 1v1 situation due to the pace advantage he has over Savic. Mount does well to bypass Marcos Llorente with a pass into Werner, and he wins his 1v1 duel by turning towards the outside, but his effort from left half space is on a tight angle and Oblak was able to push it away. In the second half, we witnessed Jorginho receiving the ball from Kovacic ahead of the midfield bank, with Mount ahead of Marcos Llorente in the Correa-Saul gap, and Werner dropping away from Hermoso into space between the lines. Mount receives Jorginho's pass and he turns to play the ball across Saul for Werner between the lines to run at the Atletico back 5, but Werner fails to control the ball and that halts Chelsea's attack. And for the brief moment that Chelsea shifted into more of a 3-4-1-2, you could see Kovacic playing the ball around Koke for Mount in a pocket of space to the left of Correa, with Marcos Llorente failing to step forward to apply pressure, while Werner is positioned between the lines just beyond Saul. And while Mount does well to turn away from Koke and the late stepping Marcos Llorente, he has Werner running across Hermoso, but Mount ends up sliding the ball across Saul and beyond the Chelsea attacker. The other clear advantage that Chelsea didn't exploit on a consistent basis was Giroud's ability to drop off deeper ahead of Felipe to link play with his teammates. Here you could see Mount sliding Jorginho's knotted ball over Saul beyond Koke for Giroud dropping off Felipe, and Giroud lays the ball off across Felipe for Mount to break forward into Atletico's half beyond the center back. While Mount does well to carry the ball beyond Felipe, with Giroud occupying Hermoso, his best option is Werner's run beyond Savic and Marcos Llorente, but Mount's attempted effort across Savic was intercepted. Shortly after that, you witness Jorginho sliding the ball across Saul for Giroud dropping off Felipe. Meanwhile, we also see Kovacic making a run across Koke. That results in Giroud laying off the ball across Felipe for Kovacic to take the center back and Koke out of the game, but Kovacic is closed by Savic and Hermoso when he evades Koke's recovery challenge, with Giroud making a run into right half space. But once again, it's the final ball that lets Chelsea down here, combined with good defending from Hermoso to intercept Kovacic's return pass to Giroud. And even when we focus on the build-up to Chelsea's winning goal, it was the Blues bypassing Atletico's rare high press, with Alonso clipping a long ball beyond Marcus Llorente stepping forward, and Giroud does well to win his aerial duel with Felipe as he nods it into the path of Kovacic running off Saul, with Marcos Alonso beginning to move forward beyond Marcus Llorente. The other issue that Atletico encountered here is that as Kovacic carries Giroud's nod down forward, you could see Marcos Alonso running across Marcos Llorente into vacant space in the left channel. And although Marcos Alonso delivers a first-time ball into the box that fails to connect with his teammates, it's Mount's pressure on Hermoso that forces him to poke the ball into Giroud for the winner. Hi everybody, thanks for watching, and subscribe here for your latest tactical analysis and daily commentary on the InnerViews show. And if that wasn't enough, don't forget you could find more organic, unfiltered soccer/football analysis on the InnerViews podcast, the best soccer/football podcast in the world, available on iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, and any Android apps on your Android devices.